It's 2023, and developing a website is no longer just about making it work. Websites need to be fast. Otherwise, this happens. 1 second of load lag time would cost Amazon $1.6 billion in sales per year. A functional website is not enough. Performance and web vitals matter. FID, LCP, CLS. In this video, you'll not only build a great app, but I'll also open up a new world to you. I'll explain why performance is crucial more than ever before, and I'll show you how we built our new JSMastery.pro website and turned our performance from this to this. And not only will I show you how we got this performance, but you'll get access to the never-before-seen codebase that is live right now on JSMastery.pro. And best of all, we'll rebuild it together. That way, you'll get practical and first-hand skills on developing production-ready code. I will code the pages of my course platform right here with you. It's the classic build and deploy process where you'll create a resource page from the platform, learn different strategies for prefetching, incremental rendering, search engine optimization, and handling the initial page load with a new Next.js strategy. Our platform will contain immediate server-side filtering, as well as search. Everything will happen instantaneously. And of course, I don't even have to mention, but it's all going to be completely mobile responsive. Before we start, I need to mention one thing. For the last 9 months, I've worked on the Ultimate Next.js 13 course. It's my best course yet, and it will not only be an amazing project-based course, but you will also learn how Next.js and the web work under the hood. The other huge improvement I added to the course are interactive lessons. To make sure you can reproduce what you're seeing on your own, I added those special lessons with instructions, hints, and solutions. The course is launching on September 22nd, and if you don't want to miss the launch sale and exclusive launch bonuses, I highly recommend to join the waitlist by heading over to jsmastery.pro/next13. And if you're watching this once the course launched, the good news is you don't have to wait. Back in 2006, very few people cared about performance, but the biggest e-commerce website in the world realized that every 100 milliseconds of latency cost them 1% of their sales. How much is that 1%? In 2006, it was 107 million. The company was Amazon, and 1/10 of a second cost that much. Now, that same 100 milliseconds costs billions. And Walmart found the same thing. 100 milliseconds less load time meant 1% more revenue. As did Staples and Netflix too. They made their homepage where users sign up for an account or sign in much faster, and they doubled their profit that year. But why does that matter to you? Why should you care if a big company makes or loses millions or even billions of dollars? If you can build fast websites or improve load times, which are proven to increase revenue, you can make a big case for not only keeping your development job, but also getting a promotion or a bonus. If you do freelance work, building high-performance websites makes you unique, which means you stand out from the sea of other average developers, which means more and higher quality clients. For your apps or startups, it means your users are happier and are more likely to use your apps. See, performance separates the average developer from a great one. It's not about finding a solution, but about finding a great solution. Vercel's vice president, Lee Robinson, says, especially with the rise of AI, there's a growing need for developers who do more than just write code. Developers who understand the bigger picture, who can work across various technologies, and who focus on delivering exceptional products to the end user. So if you need to be that developer, the dev who does more than just write code, one who knows how to write and improve the website's performance and make an impact, this video is for you. And I won't say 10 best practices to improve web performance and just list out a theory that gets you nowhere. I'll actually teach you through the code and demonstrate the techniques I employed to create JSMastery.pro, which has these impressive web performance statistics. 221 milliseconds of initial page load to less than 1 second to final page load. We have one of the best numbers out there. You'll be learning these methods and strategies through the actual creation of the platform I've dedicated months to even learning how to use the latest version of Sanity that has released special support for Next 13 applications and a bunch of other stuff like modern styling with Tailwind. We'll start by explaining Web Vitals and related info you should know on how to improve web performance. Then we'll learn different Next.js 13 out-of-the-box strategies to improve performance, and finally, we'll implement them in action. Yes, the typical JavaScript mastery way you're used to. So, are you ready to improve the performance of your website and show it off to your employers and clients? And by the way, these are the performance numbers from one of the teams from the masterclass, Team Tech Titans. They used Next.js 13, followed mentors' best practices, and achieved great web performance. And in today's video, I will share this knowledge with all of you. And just a quick announcement on that topic, the new masterclass cohort starts on October 23rd. So with that said, let's get started. To get better performance, we first need to define what web performance even is. And the answer is straightforward. Web performance refers to how fast and smoothly a website works when you use it. It's like the speed and efficiency of a car on the road. Highlighting the smoothly part is essential because web performance isn't just about speed. It's also about creating a website that's easy to navigate and use, like a well-structured road. Imagine trying to drive a sleek Ferrari on this kind of a road. But then, how do we know if we have achieved the best performance for a site? This is where Web Vitals, which Google introduced in 2020, come into play. The term Web Vitals is a set of specific metrics and guidelines developed by Google to measure and improve the user experience on websites. We as developers need these metrics to ensure that websites are fast, responsive, and provide a smooth user experience, which is crucial for user satisfaction and search engine rankings. Yes, depending on these metrics, the website that performs the best will be displayed first in search results. So what are the core parts of Web Vitals? You may have come across terms like FCP, LCP, or CLS. The core Web Vitals. 3 aspects of user experience: loading, interactivity, and visual stability. Let's understand them one by one. Largest contentful paint, or LCP, measures the loading performance of the website. It's calculated by measuring the time it'll take to render the largest image or text block visible within the page, relative to when the page first started loading. So what is a good LCP score? For good user experience, websites should aim for a largest contentful paint time of 2.5 seconds or less. And if I take you back to the course platform website, as you can see, the score is great. Looks pretty good to me. Next up are first contentful paint and first input delay. We all know how important it is to make a good first impression. And first impressions are crucial almost everywhere. When meeting new people, appearing for a job interview, and even when building websites. If your site is attractive with great UI and UX and is smooth, your interviewees will be interested in knowing more about you, won't they? On the other hand, for product companies, a good first impression of their website can make the difference between someone becoming a loyal user or leaving them and never coming back. The question now is, what makes a good first impression? And how do you measure what kind of impression you're likely making on your users? The FCP, or First Contentful Paint, measures the time it takes for the first piece of content to become visible in a user's web browser. This content can be text, images, or any other element that's part of page's content. Whereas the FID, or the first input delay, is how responsive or interactive the site is when the user tries to interact with those pixels. FID measures the time it takes for a web page to respond to the first user interaction, such as clicking a button or a link. So what are good FCP and FID scores? For a good user experience, websites should aim for a first contentful paint of 1.8 seconds or less and a first input delay of 100 milliseconds or less. Yes, you read that right. The FID has to be less than 100 milliseconds. The content shouldn't block users. Otherwise, they might feel the website isn't working. And the final performance metric is cumulative layout shift, or CLS. Have you ever been on a website, like a news website, and while you're reading, suddenly something on the page changes? Or worse, you were just about to click a link, and right before you touch it, bam, the link moves and you accidentally click on something else, like an ad or an annoying pop-up. The sudden page changes occur when elements load or shift behind the scenes. It might be due to images or videos of unknown sizes, fonts behaving unexpectedly, or third-party ads and widgets resizing. So yes, that's basically what CLS is. It measures how much the content on a web page unexpectedly jumps or shifts around while you're using it. So what is a good CLS score? Well, for a good user experience, a website should aim for a cumulative layout shift time of 0.1 or less. Have you visited the BBC News website? If you check the performance of their site, even though they have great FLP, their CLS is awful. So, if I take you back to the performance of CLP of the JS Mastery Pro website, it's a nice and round 0, meaning the best. Okay, now we've learned what the metrics are. But how do you measure these metrics? Well, we have Chrome's Lighthouse to generate the performance report. There is also a special tool that I specifically use to measure the performance of a website called GT Metrics. It will not only provide you with web scores and rate your website, but will also provide you with more detailed analysis like structure. It tells you about how a web page is put together and if there are any issues that might slow it down. It's like an X-ray of a website. You can visit this section and see what you did best or what you need to improve on your website. It's like peeking under the hood of a car to see how it's put together and making sure it runs smoothly. Everything clear so far? Now, let's talk more about how we can actually achieve these results. From time to time, we have been talking about using Next.js instead of React for enhanced performance. And a head of Google Chrome developer experience released a Netflix's web performance case study. There, he said that there are no silver bullets to web performance. Simple static pages benefit from being server rendered with minimal JavaScript. Libraries can provide great value for complex pages when used with care. If you properly offload the page from the client side and render some pages on the server side, you'll have great performance. And guess what? That's exactly what Next.js 13 does. It allows you to pre-render some of your code on the server and send content such as HTML, CSS, and minimal JavaScript files. The client refers to the device you're currently using, such as your smartphone or computer. The device sends requests to the server and displays the interface that we can then interact with. The server is essentially just a computer device, but it is equipped with a strong configuration and remains operational continuously. It is where all the code for our application is stored, so when the client, meaning our device, sends a request, the server performs the necessary computations and sends back the required outcome. Client-side means executing the code on the user's browser. This means that the server sends the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code to the client. Then, the browser executes the JavaScript code and the page is displayed. Server-side means executing the code on the server before it is sent to the user. The server executes the JS code, pre-renders the content, and sends the pre-rendered HTML file. That doesn't mean it doesn't send JavaScript files at all. It still sends some, but a lot less than before. This leads to the page loading faster because the user's browser doesn't have to download a bunch of JavaScript code and execute it to render the page. But how do we render our content on the server side? This is where Next.js has the upper hand over React. Even though React introduced the feature of React Server Components, it's Next.js 13 that has deeply integrated that feature. By default, any component you create will be rendered on the server side. Now that we know how Next.js architecture works, let's see how these things improve the performance in a nutshell. First, faster initial page load. With the above strategies, we generate the HTML on the server and send it to the client with minimal JavaScript. Therefore, the page loads faster. And closely related to that is reduced client-side load. With React, we're doing everything on the client's device, thus a higher JavaScript bundle size. Remember the Netflix case study, where they say that they reduced the JavaScript bundle by 200 kilobytes. Doesn't sound like a lot, but they're proud of it. So with Next.js server-side features, we send pre-rendered HTML pages and minimal JavaScript code. The argument against SSR is that devices and the internet are getting faster every day. And that is true. But still, there are hundreds of millions of people in the developing world and areas with slower devices and internet. Of course, it depends on where your users are. If you have a website for a local sushi restaurant in New York, you don't really need to take into account international users. It all depends on the context. So, with server-side rendering, because the server takes the load of executing the JavaScript code, users with slower internet and slower devices can start seeing content more quickly, which is never a bad thing. Next.js's next benefit is image optimization. They offer their own image component, which is highly optimized. But of course they're gonna say it's good. It's theirs. So let's not take their word for it. Let's test whether they're right or not. I created 2 projects with Sanity with the same code using Next 13 and React 18. In the performance report of React 18 website, network payloads was a critical downfall. As you can see, images were served as they're coming from Sanity, whereas using Next.js 13's image component, that wasn't the case. It actually optimized these images. As you can see, all the images have been optimized and are less than 1 megabyte in size. All we had to do was replace the lowercase img component with the Next.js's image component, and you have amazing performance. And I think you can see which core web vitals will experience enhancement by using the Next.js's image optimization, the LCP or the largest contentful paint. The third reason to use proper Next.js is SEO. Better SEO means that search engines like Google can understand your website better and recommend it to more users. Think about how often you look things up on a search engine. SEO can make a big impact on businesses, and it's one of the reasons I recommend using Next when working on projects for most clients. Client-side rendering has worse SEO because it sends minimal HTML content along with heavy JavaScript files. Search engine crawlers can't understand JavaScript that well. Server rendering is different. The server will send the complete HTML file and minimal JavaScript, meaning that the crawlers read the bigger HTML file, resulting in better SEO. Also, faster initial load speed matters. Google values it as the top ranking factor when deciding whether to display your website or not. There is a reason why so many famous companies, including Netflix, TikTok, Twitch, Hulu, Notion, Target, and many more, use Next.js. And as we've been going through all of these benefits, you can see that there are many ways in which Next.js improves web performance. Next.js offers all of these features by default. We just need to understand them and decide when to apply them based on specific circumstances. This is precisely what we will explore next, the how aspect, all while building our incredibly fast resource page. Now, there's something I want to ask you. We spent a lot of time developing these interactive slides for the intros. And before, those intros were like 5 minutes long. But now we started expanding them to be 20 plus minutes long to convey even more information. Please let me know if you appreciate those slides or if you would rather just prefer to move straight to build and deploy video. So just share your opinions of these slides or just type I prefer build and deploy in the comments down below. With that said, let me teach you how to build our signature JSM resource page. To get started with creating our SEO optimized, fully performant Next.js 13 application, it all starts with creating a new empty folder on our desktop, and let's call it Next.js 13. I'm gonna do JSM Pro. You can do whatever you prefer, and then we're going to drag and drop it into our empty Visual Studio Code. Then you can go to View and then Terminal to open Visual Studio Code's built-in integrated terminal. The next step we have to do is initialize our next.js 13 application. It's the React framework for the web used by some of the world's largest companies. So we can get started by creating the next app. Immediately within the API reference, they give us the command needed to run it. But in this case, we'll also be using something known as shadcn UI. We're going to be using a couple of components that they offer to simplify and make our app more mainstream. So inside of their documentation guide, they also have some setup instructions that also start with the same create next app. So let's do just that. Let's copy this command right here from ui.shadcn.com/docs installation next, and we can go back and we can paste it right here. We're going to make some modifications though. I'm going to remove ESLint from here, and instead of saying my app, I'm going to simply say /, which is going to create the application in the current repository we're in. So let's simply press enter. And this is going to ask us a couple of questions to make our app truly our own. For now, for simplicity purposes, I'm going to say no to ESLint, no to source directory as we don't need it. We're going to do the app router, so we can press yes over there, and then we don't need to customize the import default alias. Once that is done, our application and the base file and folder structure has been initialized. Let's also look at the next steps to initialize shadcn. So you can copy this command right here, or just type npx shadcn-ui at latest and then init. This is also going to ask us a couple of questions. Would we like to use TypeScript? We're going to say yes. And we want to use a default style. Slate color. Default style is going to be within app globals. We will use CSS variables. Our tailwind is within tailwind config.js. And then we can just press enter here, here, and here. And finally press Y to finalize everything. Now the dependencies for shadcn will be installed, and I just noticed I typed JS here instead of TS, so we can copy the tailwind config.js, we can delete it, and then just move it over to the TS right here. There we go. Now shadcn has been initialized, and the way shadcn works is we can then later on add some of the components that we need to it. For example, a button. So let's go ahead and install a button component, which you can do by running npx shadcn UI latest add button. Press Y to say you truly want to install it, and then it's immediately going to be added to components UI button. Now, of course, on top of shadcn installation, we'll be using a couple of other packages. So let's go to our package.json to see what do we need and what do we already have. We have things like Radix, which is a component library used by shadcn. And we already have many things related to Tailwind, which we'll use for styling, such as Tailwind CSS, Tailwind Animate, and more. But we'll need a couple of other packages as well. So let's run npm install, and we'll be using @sanity image URL. We're going to also use sanity/vision. And all of these things are to dynamically fetch the data to then present it on our screen. We'll also use something known as query string and sanity itself. So as you can see, not a lot of packages. If we need something else, we can easily install it. This is going to be it for now. Now, while this is installing, we can just copy this code for this button by importing this entire homepage or copying it and going to our app page.tsx and overriding everything we have there with this button. And let's also add an h1 that's going to say something like home. And we can give it a class name equal to text-to XL, which is going to make it large, and text underline, just to see if that works. So if we save it, the packages are going to get installed really soon, and then we can run npm run dev to start our application on localhost 3000. There we go. We are ready to say npm run dev. And then we can just control click the localhost 3000 here to open it within the browser. And I immediately put everything side by side so that we can see all the changes that we make live. It seems like the home text is big, but it's not underlined. So if you ever write some Tailwind class wrong, you can go to tailwindcss.com and just search it here. So I want to learn how to do underline. and you can go under basic usage and immediately you'll see what you have to do. So it is simply underline instead of text underline. So whenever you're unsure of some tailoring properties that I add, just visit the docs and you'll immediately know what the properties are. Also, you can install the Tailwind IntelliSense package right here. And this package is automatically going to let you know which CSS styles are being applied under this specific class name. Great. So we know that chat.cn is working because we have the button, and we know that Tailwind is working, and our next.js file-based routing is working as well because this page is being displayed on the home page. So now that the setup is done, let's see what we're going to create. We're going to recreate a real page from jsmastery.pro that's going to include never before seen code that we use on our own platform. So for that, we prepared an example of free resources page, which is going to be included on our real pages really soon. This page works for us really well because it's Next.js 13 server-side rendered, and it allows us to display all of our ebooks and professional resources that we offer for free. So right here, we have the search. So if you want to know something about MERN, for example, you search for it. It works really well. You can also toggle these things to see Next.js 13 resources, front-end, back-end, full stack, and more. And of course, you can go to the details of that specific article with complete loading and then download that guide. So a lot of stuff is happening here. For you, these don't have to be resources. They can be something else. They can be your projects and more. But even if you decide to recreate this page exactly as it is, this is going to be incredibly beneficial for you because we're going to deal with server-side based filtering, server-side based search as well. Then we're going to focus on improving the page optimization, performance, and SEO benefits, and so much more by showing you the tricks that we've used within our own platform. So let's focus on creating the base file and folder structure, and then we can get started with building it. First, I'm going to teach you a concept called route groups. So within our app, you can create a new folder, which is going to be called home. And within here, we're going to display a page and a loading for the home component. But if you put a page.tsx within it, it's not going to be rendered under /home, as usually it works with Next.js file-based routing. Rather, if you put something with this group, that means that it's not going to be added as a route. We just use it for organizational purposes and grouping purposes within our Next.js layout. Of course, we go into that in much more depth in our Next.js course, but for the purposes of this video, you know that in the homepage, we can add loading.tsx as well as the page, and all of this is going to relate to the homepage that we have here. That means that we don't have to have a page right here, but rather we can have a global layout. So here we have a layout, and that layout is going to say what can we see on the homepage. So inside of here, we can immediately change the metadata a bit. We don't need this inter font, so we can remove it and all instances of it, as well as the class name. And here we just have the HTML and the body where we render children. And we can change the title of our application to something like JS Mastery. And the description can be JS Mastery resources. Great. So now that's going to change. But right now, it's complaining that the default export of loading is not a React component in home. So we can create the page and the loading to be components. And we can do that by using the shorthand method called RAFCE, which is going to quickly create a React arrow function component. If this didn't work for you, you can install ES7 Plus, React Redux React Native snippets. And that's going to allow you to quickly create this code right here. That's for the loading. And we can repeat the procedure for the page. There we go. So we have our page right here. And then this home is going to be within yet another folder called root. So inside of root, we're going to put everything that has to do with our application. And the reason why we're doing this is because there's going to be a new file in the root called layout.tsx. This is going to be our primary layout. So let's run RAFCE and let's see what this layout is going to return. Now you can just see layout, right? But the purpose of the layout is to get the children right here as props and to pass them forward. And since we're using TypeScript, we can define the type of this as children is of a type react.react node. There we go. And now what we want to show in this layout is just going to be a React fragment within which we're going to have a navbar. After the navbar, we're going to show the children, meaning whatever is rendered in that page. And then we want to have the footer. So now if we save this, you can see navbar, footer, and then page, because children is rendering the contents of our page within the home page. Because children is rendering the contents of our page, which for now is just a piece of content that says page. So let's close all of the currently open files and folders, and let's one more time explain it in simple terms. So we have our primary layout, which we're using just for some SEO things, importing the styles, adding metadata, and more. Then we have our root folder, which is where we have most of our routes. And here we have a layout that's going to be applied for all of the folders and files within the root folder. Here we have our first homepage. This is going to be our home, and if we change it, you can see it's going to get changed. The layout is simply going to add a navbar and footer to all of the pages that are within this root folder. So let's start with some general styles. We want to ensure that the background looks like this, and we can do that within our basic layout that is in the app folder. Here, we can give this entire body a class name equal to min-h-screen. This means that it's going to have a min height of 100 VH. We want to give it a background of black 100, that's the color, and font of Poppins. Now, if we save this and look at our current site, you can see nothing's going to happen. And that's because we don't yet have the BG black styles within our globals.css. Here, we have some styles provided by Tailwind as well as chat.cn. And in the GitHub gist, in the description of this video, you can find the updated globals.css file. Inside of there, we're just going to add some colors, gradients, and that's about it. So you can copy it and paste it right here. And here, we also just set font family to Poppins. But as you can notice, this is not going to immediately add this background color that we wanted. And that's because this BG that you saw in the layout right here, background black 100, is a special Tailwind config variable that we have to add. So you can go to the tailwind.config.ts, and here we have some colors from chat.cn, but we want to add some of the colors of our own. So in that same GitHub gist, you'll find the updated tailwind.config.ts, which you can paste right here. That's going to ensure that all our variables and colors are taken into account. Now, let's close these two files. And let's start from the layout. Here we have navbar and footer. And these are two pieces of text for now that we have to turn into components. So let's go to our Explorer, to Components, and then right here within the Components folder, we can create a new navbar.tsx as well as a footer.tsx files. Inside of both of which, we can run rafce to just quickly spin up some components, and we can now import them within our home layout. So here we can just turn this into a self-closing component, as well as the footer, and we can simply double click and press Control space or Command space on Mac, which is going to give you the import statement for that specific component. So you can get them from here, or you can just manually type the imports there. And now nothing's gonna change seemingly, but now we can move into our component and we can start working on it. So to make our navbar more semantic, we can turn this div into a semantic nav tag and give it a class name equal to flex center. We want to make it fixed to the top, as well as give it a top 0. Then we want to give it a Z of 50 to always appear on top, give it a full width by saying W-full, and a border of B2. So that's 2 pixel border bottom, and the color of border black 200, padding Y of 7, meaning padding on top and bottom, and text within it is going to be white. Then we can create another div that we're going to use for layout. And this div is going to have a class name equal to flex between, margin X auto, W-full, max-w-screen 2xl. So the width is not going to go over this specific width right here. We can give it a padding X of 6 to give it some space on left and right. And for responsiveness, on extra small devices, we can set the padding X to 8, and on small devices, padding X to 16. Now within here, we can show a link tag. And this link is just going to point to the homepage, so /. And within it, we want to render a next.js 13 image that's going to have a source equal to /JSM-logo.svg. Now we have to import link from next link and import image from next image. We don't need React in this case. You're going to notice that the image also wants an alt tag. So let's say alt is equal to logo. And if we save that, you're going to notice that we're still missing the width property. So with Next.js images defined in this way, you need to provide the width and the height properties as well. So let's expand this in multiple lines. And let's add a width of about 55, as well as a height of about 40. And click Save. Still, it's not going to show because this image doesn't exist. So for that reason, I want to provide you with all of the necessary assets you need to create this application. So once again, in the description down below, there's going to be a zipped public folder, which you can download, unzip, and then simply paste in the root of your directory. You can delete the current one and paste the new one right here. Inside of here, we simply have some assets, icons, and logos that we can use across the application. So if we save this and try to search for this logo under public, we'll see a JSM-logo SVG right here. And we just have to ensure we're properly referencing to it. Sometimes it's going to get stuck to the previously cached version of it. So if it doesn't work for you, you can press Ctrl+C and then Y and then just rerun the application. For me, it loaded automatically right here so we can see our great new logo. Now, after the logo, we want to show an image that's going to act as a hamburger menu, meaning for mobile devices. So here we can give it a source of /hamburger-menu.svg. We can give it a width of 30, a height of 30. Alt is going to be simply hamburger menu, and class name is going to be visible on regular devices, but on medium, it's going to be hidden. So if we save it right here, we cannot see anything, but if we go smaller, we start seeing it right here. Great. So now we can go below this image and we can start rendering our links by creating a new UL known as an unordered list that's going to have a class name equal to flex center, gap-x-3. This is a gap on the horizontal side. We want to give it a max MD of hidden, and then on medium devices, gap X of 10. So we're going to increase it a bit. Within it, we want to render an LI. And within this LI, we can render a link. This link is going to say Next.js 13.4 course, as this is what we're working on right now. So we can give it an href pointing to https://jsmastery.pro/next13. And we can give it a target equal to _blank. Now, if we save this, you can see Next 13 course, and this is going to point directly to our official website. We can style it a bit by giving this li a class name equal to body text gradient _blue-purple, and we're going to do a font bold. Sometimes you have to add an exclamation mark at the start to apply the style, and I'm going to fix this typo right here with the purple to make it look good. And we're going to have just one more link, and for that one, we can copy this entire li and paste it below. This one is just going to have body text, and it's going to have a font of normal, so it's not going to be purple. And this one is going to point to /masterclass. And here we can say masterclass. Again, just to have some links on our navbar to make it look good, exactly as it is on our website right here. Now we can focus on a really simple footer. As you can see, the footer is going to look like this, some kind of a copyright and 2 links to terms and conditions and privacy policy. Every website needs to have this. So let's control click to go into the footer and let's quickly implement it. Our footer is going to be a HTML5 semantic footer tag. And within the footer, we're going to have a p tag that's going to render this piece of text right here saying copyright. You can find this by Googling the copyright sign, 2023 JS Mastery Pro, all rights reserved. And below it, we're going to have a div that's going to have a class name equal to flex gap x9. And there we want to have 2 of these links. So we can do a link that's going to have an href to / terms of use. And there we can render the terms and conditions. And we can duplicate this link. And the second one is going to just say privacy policy. And here we can render privacy policy as well. Of course, we have to import the link component from next link. If we save this and go back to our current site, it's really hard to see anything. That's because we are yet to provide styles to our footer tag. So let's give it a class name equal to text-white-800. This is going to make all of the elements visible. And right now they appear on the top. They should be appearing on the bottom. So if we go into the layout, we are rendering children, and that children is rendering this page, which is for now just the home page. So even if we add a few more H1s that say home here, let's see if that's going to push it. It does push it a bit, right? But the actual text is still below the navbar. And the home page should ideally take the full height of the screen. So let's see our general layout right here, whether we have defined that properly. Mint-h-screen, and that's being taken by the entire page. But for now, at least we can see what we're doing on the footer. And then as soon as we're done with it, we can move to the main contents of the page. So for this footer, we can give it a flex between, so the elements appear on 2 sides. We can also give it a body text to make it just a bit smaller. We can give it a W full for full width and a gap of Y10. This is mostly for mobile devices. We can give it a border top, so border-T, as well as border-black-400. We can give it a bit of a different background color, such as BG black 100, padding X of 20, so this is padding on left and right, padding Y of 12, and on max MD flex call, so they're going to appear in just one line. So this is how it looks like. If we collapse it, it's going to look good, and here, this is how it looks like. Same as on the finished version. You can see it on the bottom, and as we collapse, it looks like this. Great. A really simple footer. But now, of course, we move to the main part, which is going to be this banner that we can see right on top, the search, categories, and then finally the rendering of all of our resources. So we can close our footer, we can close our layout, and the only thing we want to focus on now is going to be our home page, which is located within home and then page right here. So to start working on our page, we can wrap everything within an HTML5 semantic main tag, and we can give it a class name equal to flex center. We can give it some paddings, margin X of auto, W-full. We want to give it a max W screen of 2XL. So this means that nothing is going to go over 1440p. And we can give it flex call, so the elements appear one below another. Then we can give it a section. And this section is going to have a class name of nav padding, as well as W full. And within it, we can render a div that's going to become this banner right here. So let's create a new div. And within it, let's render an H1 that's going to say JavaScript Mastery resources. And you should always have just the one H1 on the screen and then have different elements like H2, H3, and so on for SEO benefits. Now, we cannot yet see this H1 because it is in dark on dark, but let's style it a bit by giving it a class name of, on small devices, it's going to be heading 1, usually heading 2. It's going to have a margin bottom of 6. It's going to have a text center and text white. And now we should be able to see it. Finally, we can style this div that's wrapping it by giving it a class name equal to flex center, relative, min-height of 274 pixels is what I found to work the best, w-full, flex-call, rounded-xl, and then give it a BG banner. So this is going to apply the background image of JSM Resources banner. We want to set it to BG cover, BG center, and text center as well. So now this is looking good, and it's expanding as we do this. So it reveals more technologies as well. Pretty cool stuff. Now, immediately below this div, we want to render our search form. And our search form is going to be yet another component. So we can see search form, and we can create that component within components, search form.tsx, and run rafce. Finally, once we create it, we can simply import it from the home page by double-clicking, pressing Ctrl or Command space, and importing it automatically at the top from components. Of course, we cannot see it yet. For now, it says simply search form, but soon enough, we're going to actually create its layout. Here, we can end with our section, and then below it, we're going to render our filters component later on. So that's going to be here as well, and that's going to be these filters right here. And immediately after, we're going to be rendering our documents. So cool stuff is coming really, really soon. But for now, let's focus on the UI UX of the search and of the filters before we start utilizing all of the Next.js tips and tricks. So let's head into the search form. Our search form is going to be just that, a form. So we can wrap everything in a form component, and immediately within it, we're going to render a label. Within the label, we're going to show the image, which we have to import from next image. And that image can simply render a source equal to / magnifying glass.svg with a class name of absolute position and then left 8 with a width of 32, a height of 32 as well, and the alt tag of search icon. If we save it and go back, you cannot see it yet. That's because I missed an N here when saying magnifying. And there we go, we can see it here. Immediately below it, we want to render the input tag, but that input is going to be coming from shadcn. So if you head to ui.shadcn.com and search for input, you'll quickly find that they have an input component, which is really simple, yet quite effective. So let's copy this command by saying copy npm, and then let's paste it into our new terminal. That's going to allow us to add the shadcn input. And as I said, shadcn works a bit differently. It doesn't bloat all of your code with all of their components that they have at your disposal. You can choose exactly what gets installed. So you can add it, press Y to allow it to add it to your database, and then it's going to be added right here within UI. And you have access to that entire component. As soon as you do that, you can simply import it at the top. So let's paste it right here. And then you can use it. You can just render the self-closing input tag from shadcn, save it, go back, and there we go. Now, a really cool thing about all shadcn components is that they support Tailwind out of the box. So you can style them as you would style your own components. That means that we can do a class name, give it a base regular text, age-fit, so this is fit content height, give it a border of 0 to make it look a bit better, and a BG black 400. If we save this, it's already looking more like it, right? We can also give it a padding Y of 6 to increase its height. We can give it a padding left of 20 and a padding right of 8. The text within it can be text white 800. And if we save it, this is more like it, but we still have this outline around it. And here it looks a bit better, right? So let's define something known as a ring. So we can say important or exclamation mark ring dash 0 and exclamation mark ring dash offset dash 0 as well. This is going to remove that ugly outline once you click it. And we also want to give it a placeholder of a color text white 800. Once you do that, we can also give it a type is equal to text. We can give it a placeholder of a type search. If you do that, it's looking more like it. The last thing we have to do is, of course, add the style to make this form look better and put the magnifying glass within the input. So let's style the form by giving it a class name of flex center, margin X of auto, margin top of 10, W-full, and on small devices, minus MT10, and on small devices, padding X of 5. This is going to make it look like this, but now we have to style the label by giving it a class name equal to flex center, relative, W-full for full width, and max-W 3XL. So this is going to be 48 rem or 768 pixels. And there we go. It appears right on top of our form. Actually, it's going to look good on all screen sizes. So it's going to remain in the center, or on mobile devices, it's going to decrease. So this is looking great. Now, of course, it's up to us to make this input dynamic. So we'll definitely need to keep track of the search somehow. And how do we keep track of search elements? Well, it's of course by using state. So although this component is going to be entirely server-side rendered, which is why it's going to be so performant and SEO optimized, this smaller component within it, the search form, has to be client-side rendered because we're dealing with some events, with key press events, with click events, submit events, and so much more. So what we can do is just use state here. I never said that it's not good to use state. We have to use it when we have to use it. But when you don't have to, then stick with server-side rendering. But in cases like these, where you have to deal with variables, states, state changes, values, effects, side effects, click events, and those sorts of things, definitely feel free to use a state. This one is going to be set to an empty string by default, and we have to import useState from React. So let's define it at the top, import useState coming from React. Now, as soon as I save this, something is going to happen. And I want you to think about what and why. I'm going to press save and check this out. It's saying you're importing a component that needs useState. It only works in client component, but none of its parents are marked with useClient. So they're server components by default. Maybe one of these should be marked as a client entry with useClient. Yes, we definitely won't make the page useClient, but we will make the form rendered on the client side. So we can add the useClient directive on the top. And there we go. Everything works, and we can now manage the state while still keeping the main page server-side rendered. That's the beauty of next.js. And now, within this input, we can add a value of search, as well as an onChange handler that's going to get the event, and then set search to be equal to e.target.value, which is then going to update the value. Great. So the UI of the search is now done. We're going to leave it be for now until we implement the filters, and then we're going to come back to it to implement the logic, functionality, and server-side data fetching. So let's create on our filters by turning them into a real component. Within our components, we can create a new filters.tsx and run rafce. After which, we can simply import these filters right here by getting them from components, filters. If we save this, we should be able to see filters somewhere here, although they're hard to notice right now So let's fix that by changing the UI of our filters. Our filters are basically going to be an unordered list. So right here, we can say UL, and within it, we want to render or map over some of the links. So right at the top here, we can say const links, and we can define whatever links you prefer. We can do something like all. Let's do next 13. We can also do frontend, maybe backend, and finally full stack. And now here we can map over them and show some of the elements like so. So let's say links.map, where we get each individual link, and for each one of them, we return a button. This button has to have a key because we're mapping over it of link. It's going to have an onClick handler, which is going to be an empty callback function for now. And as soon as you add an onClick, something's going to happen. It's going to say, if you need interactivity, consider converting this part to a client component. So yes, here we don't have key press events, but we have click events, and that's also an event, which means that we have to turn this into a use client component as well. Once again, this page is going to be server-side rendered, but it's allowed to render client-side components for interactivity. So now it's working again. And within this button, we can render the contents of the link. So now we should be able to see something. Yep, they're barely noticeable, but we can see them here if I hover over them. So let's give this UL a class name of text-white-800. Let's give them a body text. Let's say no scroll bar. Let's make them flex. Let's give them a full width, a max W full, a gap of 2 to provide some spacing, overflow of auto, padding Y of 12 to provide some spacing, and on small devices, max W of 2XL. There we go. That's already a bit better, but let's style each individual button by giving it a class name. And let's do white space, no wrap, rounded-LG, padding X of 8, padding Y of 2.5, and then capitalize. If we save this, it's already looking a bit better, but still not like here. Not like once we click something. We want to be able to know on which one are we currently on. And this is going to be an interesting one. We want to figure out what search params are used right here on the top. So for that, we need to know which tag is currently active. So let's create a new use state right here, coming from React. So we can import right at the top, use state, coming from React. And we can call it active, as well as set active. And at the start, it can be an empty string. And now we can add a function that's going to be called once we click on one of these buttons. So const handle filter. And that's going to be a callback function. Now, on click, we can call this handle filter, and we're going to pass the link that we currently clicked on. We can accept it right here within params of this function, link of a type string, and we can simply set active link. And then now this is active, we can modify the class name here. So we can do a dynamic template string by wrapping everything in backticks. We can add a variable right here by saying if active is triple equal to link, then add gradient underscore blue dash purple, else do nothing. And now if we save this, and right now we cannot see the change yet. So let's simply do a console log right here, and we can console log two things. We can console log the link as well as active. And let's try to compare the two. The link, of course, is only available here. So what we want to do is just do the active. And if we now inspect and do a console log, we can get an object saying that active is currently just an empty string. But if we click on it, active is now going to become next 13. And the link is also going to be next13. If we click on frontend, we can see frontend, backend, and so on. So we indeed are clicking on these, and this expression right here should be true. So we should be adding a gradient underscore blue dash purple. So let's try to dissect it one more time. I'm going to put this in a new line so it's easier to see. Class name, active is triple equal to link. And then if it is, gradient is going to be blue purple, else is going to be an empty string. And then in any case, we provide all of these other properties. If we save it this way, now it's actually changing the active state. So we can remove the console log and close the console. Great, this is now working. But of course, this is not yet how we're going to do the full fetching and server-side generation. And here's the reason why. On the finish side, check what's happening alongside this button changing color. It's actually changing the category right here in the URL. And that's also something we want to do really soon, because based on the URL, we'll be fetching this data from the backend. So now that the UI for our filters and our search form is done, and it's looking almost like it does on the finished version, we are ready to set up our simple backend using Sanity. You can do any kind of a backend here. You can do just a MongoDB or SQL, or use a CMS. In this case, we'll be using Sanity because the goal here are not databases, it's fetching data from any kind of a data source. So now we're going to quickly spin up a Sanity instance, put all of this data within it, and then we'll have something to fetch to show how server-side rendering and static generation works and how we can achieve crazy performance and SEO. So let's do that next. Sanity says, let's make content our competitive advantage. So let's do just that. First, we want to install Sanity's command line interface, and this is going to allow us to create new Sanity instances. So we can run npm install -- global sanity at latest, and we can run that right here in our second terminal. Sanity command line interface is a global dependency that's going to allow us to then set up all of our new projects on a per project basis. So let's wait until it installs. Once the CLI has been installed, let's run Sanity login. And let's choose Google or GitHub, whatever you prefer. And that's going to open up a browser window that's going to allow you to log in. Once you log in, we can run npm create sanity at latest and press enter. It's going to ask you whether you want to install this package, so press Y and then enter. And then it's going to ask you a couple of questions. Create a new project. The project name can be JSM resources. And it's saying, do you want to use the default dataset configuration? We can say yes. It's going to ask us, would you like to add configuration files? We're going to say yes to that as well. Do you want to use TypeScript? We're going to say yes. Do you want to embed Sanity Studio? We're going to say yes. Would you like to use next.js app directory? We're going to say yes again. What route do you want to use for the studio? We can use /studio. That's okay. We can select a project template. In this case, we're going to say clean project with no predefined schemas. And would you like to add the project ID to your .env file? We can say yes. And now it's going to install all the necessary packages. Great. That is done. Let's see what Sanity has done to our file and folder structure. We can now see a new Sanity package, and within it, a lib that's going to have a client, and it's going to have image as well. Finally, below it, it's going to have an env.ts, as well as a schema.ts file. The first thing we want to do is create a couple of schemas. So right within the Sanity folder, we can create a new folder called schemas. And within it, we can put this default schema, and we can rename it to something like resource.schema.ts. Within it, we can create our first document that we're going to use within our application. So what does each one of our documents has to have? Well, let's define it together, if I expand this correctly. So we don't need anything from here, but we can define it just as a regular object. Const schema is equal to an object, where a name is equal to resource, title is equal to resource with a capital R. We want to add a type, equal to document, and then we want to add fields that this document is going to have. The first field is going to be of a name is title. Title is going to be title. Type is going to be a string. We will require it, so we can say require, and then we can add validation, which is going to be set a function where we get a rule, and then we say rule.required. This is just for Sanity knows, so this is required, and we can set rule as any. This is going to be this part right here, the Tailwind CSS Starter Kit, or the Ultimate React.js Mastery, and stuff like that. We need a title, right? The second thing is going to be something known as a slug. So we can say name is slug, title is slug, type is slug, and options is going to be source title. So it's going to inherit this from the title. And if you don't know what a slug is, if you click on this document, you can see that a specific new slug is created. It can be an ID or it can be something else. Like this can be put together into a URL format. And based on that, we know on which URL we are on. Now, let's see, what do we have after the slug? Well, we need to know what are we going to download for each one of these. So we have to have some kind of a download link. So let's create a new object where the name is equal to download link. Title is download link. Type is set to URL. And validation is also going to be set as rule any rule.required. Then we want to keep track of the number of views or downloads we have on each one of these. So let's create a new field called views, name of views. We're going to give it a title of views as well. We want to give it a type of number, and we want to give it an initial value of 0. There we go. We also need a poster, which is going to be this photo right here. So let's create a new field that's going to be of a name is equal to poster. Then the title can be poster as well. And type this time is going to be image. We're going to add a validation where rule is set to required. And we can add options where we can say hotspot to true. This is going to ensure that the image is rendered the way that we want it to render. Finally, we need 2 more things. Another thing is going to be a category. So each one of these posts or posters or documents or resources is going to belong to one of the categories. So let's add another field called name is category. Title is going to be category. Then we can add a type, which is going to be string. Finally, we can add validation, as we have done so far, with a rule.required. And now we can provide some options, because we don't have to have all the categories in the world. We can just provide a list of a couple. Let's make that an array of frontend. Let's also add backend. Maybe we can add next13. Let's add full stack as well. And maybe other. There we go. This is good. And this is our resource schema. Now we also want to create a schema for a collection of resources, which is going to be called a resource playlist. So let's create a second schema right here called resource-playlist.schema.ts. Here we can do something similar. Define a schema by saying const schema is equal to a new object where name is resource playlist, title is resource playlist, type is document, and then we can provide different kinds of fields. We're still gonna need a field of a type name, title. Title is title, type is string, and it's gonna be a validation of rule.required. Finally, this specific resource playlist is going to contain a collection of resources. So we can create a second field. Name is going to be resources. Title is going to be resources. Type is going to be array. And then we can declare of what. It's going to be an array of type is equal to reference. And what is it referencing to? Well, it's referencing to an array of type is resource. This is going to allow us to create as many playlists as we want. So for example, we can have front-end resources. Well, this is a category, but on the homepage, we can have most popular, we can also have latest, we can have most loved, and so much more. You'll be able to create different arrays or playlists of resources. Then we can also export default this schema. Well, now that we have those schemas, let's do something with them. So first, let's export them together from one file as schemas by creating a new index.ts file. There, we can simply say const schemas is equal to an array where we have resource and we have resource playlist. And these two are coming from different schemas. So let's import them at the top by saying import resource from /resource schema. And then we can also import resource playlist from resource-playlist.schema. And we can export default schemas. Now that the schemas are created, let's close all of this up and let's prepare for next steps, which is going to be figuring out how to create documents based off of these schemas within Sanity. And then later on, of course, fetch them within our application. Right now, we have just created two different objects and exported them. If you look into our schemas, there's nothing about Sanity here. These are just objects. So now it's our turn to reference these within Sanity configuration, which is right here below sanity.config.ts. This is the configuration used for Sanity Studio that's mounted on the /studio route. So what we have to do is import the schemas. We can do that by saying import. Instead of schema, we can say schemas coming from data/sanity/schemas. Then we can leave this base path as /studio, project ID, dataset, and everything as it is. And then schema is going to be of a types schemas. So now we provide multiple and we can save this. And there's one thing that you might have missed. If you go to our app and then to Studio, you'll see that Sanity created a new page for us. So what do you say that we try to test it out? Let's go to localhost 3000 /studio. Here, you can see that we're missing a next public Sanity dataset. And then after reloading, this is what I see. We still have some undefined types and errors in our code. I believe this is referring to our schema. So let's get into our resource.schema, and it seems like I've never exported it. So let's do export default schema and save. Also, it's referring to the fields property. So let's see fields. And this quickly points us to the fact that instead of field, we should have said fields, which is then going to automatically run our localhost studio. So to access our content, we need to add the following URL as course origin to the Sanity project. So let's click continue. And that's going to automatically lead us to here where you'll have to sign in. After signing in, you can just add course origin. Now you need to choose a login provider. And after that, you'll be able to see your Sanity Studio. Inside of here, we have the resource, and you can immediately create new documents within your Sanity Studio. Let me show you how powerful this is. We can immediately create a resource right here within Sanity Studio by giving it a title. And let's try to follow some of the resources on JSM available right now. Let's do 2022 Frontend Developer Step-by-Step Guide. We can copy the entire title. This is a long one. The slug is going to be automatically generated. And we also need to provide a download link. So this is going to be the link to the actual guide. This is going to be just a Google Drive link. So I'm going to copy this one from here as well. And the views is going to start as 0. Then we need to save the photo. So I'm going to save it to downloads. And finally, we can upload it right here and choose a category. This is obviously going to be frontend and click publish. It is so easy to add new documents to our database. But of course, the best part is when we actually retrieve them within our application. And it's so cool that we can run our studio right on our local host, and then we can easily get back to our application just by cleaning the URL. Now that we have our schemas and we have our first document in the database, it's the time to fetch it. So let's create server actions that are going to allow us to fetch those documents on the server side. We can do that by creating a new file called actions within Sanity, actions.ts. Within the actions file, we can import something known as grok, and this is coming from next.sanity. Grok is Sanity's open source query language. It's a powerful and intuitive language, easy to learn. Essentially, we're going to use it to make queries. So, how queries work? You simply say, give me everything of a type is equal to movie, and then you provide some filters. After that, you specify what do you want to get back from that specific document. I'm going to show you how to use it. So right here, we can say export const get resources, and that's equal to an async function where we get some params. The params we're going to get are going to be of a type get resources params, and we can define that as an interface right here. Interface get resources params, where we have a query of a type string, we have a category of a type string as well, and we have a page of a type string. Immediately at the top of that function, let's first expand it so we can see it. There we go. This is a bit better. We can destructure the params. We can get them query, category, and page is equal to params. Then we can open up a new try and catch block, and we can start forming our queries. First, we'll be making queries to our Sanity client, and that's going to be within lib client. Currently, we have one client, but for updating the view, we need specific permissions. Sanity is going to allow us to perform these post and patch methods by using tokens. So we're going to create two different clients depending on their permissions. We can have a read client, and we're going to also have a second one by duplicating this one that's going to be write client. They're going to be almost identical, but the last one is also going to have access to a token. And this token will be coming from envs at the top, token. So let's go to the .env, and from here, we can export a token. That's going to look something like this. Export const token is equal to, we can use the same function that they have, assert value, just to keep the error handling good. Then we can say process.env.next public sanity token, and something like missing environment variable next public sanity token. So now we have to actually add that token in there. And to add a token, you can go to the management of your project. Then you can go to API, tokens, and here you can create a new API token. You can enter the name, such as token, and then give it editor access and click save. This is going to give you the key, and you can add it to your envs by saying next public sanity token right here within the .env, next public sanity token, and we can add it right here. If we save this, the changes should be read by our application, and we should now have access to this token from here, and we now have a read and a write client. Now that we have those clients, we can go back to our actions, and we can say const resources is equal to await read client dot fetch. And of course, this read client is going to be imported from /lib read client. And then we make a fetch. To create this fetch, we'll need to use something known as grok. And this grok is imported from Next Sanity. It's going to allow us to write a query using grok, which is Sanity's query language. So now let's write it by saying grok, and then you add template strings. And within here, we're going to create our own function that's going to be called build query. That's going to help us with building the query, right? So let's go to Files. And right here within Sanity, we can do a new utils.ts file. And we can create a new function, export function build query. This function is going to accept some params, which are going to be of a type build query params. So we have to define them right here at the top. And it's important what these are going to be. So that's going to be an interface build query params that's going to contain a type, meaning a resource of which type do we want to get. That's going to be a string. Also, the query. Do we want to do some sorting or filtering? Also, the category. Maybe we only want to get resources from a specific category. A page, which is a number in case we want to do pagination. And how many elements per page, which is also going to be an optional number. Now that we have this, we can destructure all of the values at the top, such as saying const type, query, category, page is equal to 1. So by default, the page is 1. And per page, you can do any kind of default like 10. And that's going to be equal to params. Now, based on this, we can create some of the base grok queries. So we can say const condition or conditions is equal to an array where we get a template string of everything where underscore type is equal to, and then you define a type like so. Make sure to put it within double quoted strings. Then, if we have a specific query, we can also do a conditions dot push, where we're going to add title, match, and then here you can say everything query. And you can also wrap it with an asterisk. So it should look like this and end it with a double quoted string. Again, if you want to learn more about the grok syntax, you can see everything here, filtering, sorting, and more. And of course, everything is really well documented right here. So you can know exactly how you have to make those queries. Now, going back to where we were, we're creating that query. And we also want to know if we have a category. So if category, and if category is not equal to all. In that case, we can do conditions dot push. And we want to say a template string of category is double equal to, again, in double quoted strings, category like so. Let's put this in a new line so it's easier to see. And let's also put this in a new line. There we go. So now we know exactly what we're doing. So we pose a base condition, and then based on the query or category, we add some things to the search condition. Now we want to calculate pagination limits, and we can do that by calculating the offset, meaning by how many elements do we have to move. And we can get that by calculating the elements we have already gone through. So that's going to be page minus 1 times elements per page. And we can set the limit is equal to per page. Now, based on that, if conditions dot length are greater than 1, we can return a template string where we get conditions 0, which is only going to be what? The first thing, type, and we want to add and. So and within parentheses, conditions dot slice 1. And then we want to dot join them as well with an and character, like so. And these conditions should have been closed right here. So the rest of the thing is going to be just string. But here we turn a new thing on. So conditions dot slice dot join. We close it right here. We also need to close the first condition. And then we want to set the offset and the limit. And that's going to look like this. Offset dot 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 and then limit. So this is ensuring that we only show specific pages. Now, I know that this seems complicated, and this is a special function we are creating to later on simplify our life writing these queries. And we also need to do an else if conditions.length is not greater than 1, meaning if it is 1, in that case, we just want to return conditions 0 and then do the same offset and limit. Now, as I said, I know that this is a bit complicated, so the entire build query function is going to be down in the description. So in case you had just a little typo right here, that's not going to mess with our application. Rather, you'll be able to copy this entire code and simply paste it here, and everything is going to work. Now that we have built this build query, we can go back to actions and we can just use it or call it right here. Build query imported from /utils. That query is going to accept the params we have declared, the build params, so we can define the type as resource. We can pass in the query as well, the category as well, and the page is going to be parseInt, as it has to be a number, of page. So this simplified our life significantly, and now the only thing we have to do is we have to say what do we want to get back once all that filtering is back. We want to get back the title, the underscore ID, the download link. We also want to get an image back, but in the following format: poster.asset is going to be a URL. We want to get back the number of views, the slug, as well as the category. And finally, we want to return resources. Finally, in the catch, we can do console.log and simply console log the error. But now we have a function called getResources, or an action that we can call within our application. So we were right here. We were in the page. So let's go to home, root, home, page, and let's get ready to call our resources. Right here at the top of the page, we can say const resources is equal to await, and since we have await, this page has to be async, get resources, and this is coming from Sanity actions. We can call it as a function and pass in an object to provide some parameters. We want to provide a query, which for now is going to be an empty string. We also want to provide a category. We will do that soon. And then we also want to provide a page, which for now can be just a string of 1. And of course, TypeScript is saving us here because as soon as you misspell something, it's going to let you know. So this is a category. And now let's hope that we get something back. Let's console log those resources. Where do you think that this console log is going to appear? Let's reload the page. And I won't even open the console on the right side, because there is no use client at the top, which means it's going to be added right here. And there we go. We have an array with one object that's containing our 2022 front-end web developer roadmap. That is great. So what do you say that we render it? We can do so right here below the filters. To loop through our elements, we can first create a section. This section is going to have a class name equal to flex center, mt of 6 for margin top, w-full for full width, flex-column, and on small devices, margin top 20. Here we can show some kind of a header. So for now, let's simply say header, and later on we're going to make it dynamic depending on what we're currently searching for. Below this header, we can have a div, and this div is going to have a class name equal to margin top of 12, flex w-full, flex-wrap, so we can wrap elements in case there's not too much width, justify center, gap of 16 to make some spacing, and on small devices, justify start. Immediately within it, we want to check if resources !.length is greater than 0. If it is, we want to immediately render the resources by saying resources.map, where we get each individual resource. For now, we can leave the type of any. We can simply render something known as a resource card. So this is a component we're going to create. And in case we don't have any resources, we can do a colon and say p tag of class name equal to body-regular and text-white 400, something like no results found or no resources found. Now, the last part to be able to see this is to create a new component in the components folder called resource card.tsx. We can do RAFCE and we can import it right here. Since we're looping over it, we need to provide it a key by saying key is equal to resource._id. And we'll need to provide some other things so we can render them within the card, such as title is equal to resource.title. We can provide the ID as well, resource._ID. We can provide the image equal to resource.image. We can provide the download number equal to resource.views. And we can provide a slug equal to resource._ID as well. Now, TypeScript is currently complaining, saying that this component is not accepting any props. So let's get into it and let's accept those props right at the top. We can get them from here by getting the ID, title, image, download number, and the slug. And this is going to be of a type props. Finally, right here, we can define the interface props that's going to have an ID of a type string. It's going to have a title of a type string. It's going to have an image of a type string. It's going to have a download number of a type string and a slug of a type string. And the download number is a number, of course, not a string. Finally, each one of these cards is going to be a shadcn card component. So by going to shadcn and searching for card, you can see how that is going to look like. This is a simple card. And of course, you can style it further. But for now, let's simply add it to our repo by saying npx shadcn UI latest add card. We can paste that right here, press enter, press Y to say that we truly want to install it. And we can then copy all the imports from shadcn, paste them right here at the top of our component. And we can copy the card usage. Let's paste it right here, indent it properly, and save it. Now going back, we should be able to see one card with some dark text in it. Of course, let's go ahead and style it together by giving it a class name equal to w-full max-w-fit border 0 important or exclamation mark bg transparent, and on small devices max-w 356 pixels. If we save this, we still cannot see anything because it's dark. We're going to wrap this entire thing within a link component. So everything that is here can be within a link. This is going to, of course, be a next.js 13 next link component that's going to have an href pointing to, that's going to be /resource/ and then ID. Within the link, we can render everything else, such as card header and more. And of course, indent this properly. The link can only have one element within it. So the card content and card footer can be put right here below the link. And of course, the card is going to wrap everything still. So only the card header is within the link. Within our card header, we're going to show a div, and this div is going to render an image within it. This image is going to be of a source equal to image coming from props. It's going to have a class name equal to h-full for full height, rounded-md, and object cover. And I found values of width 384 and height of 440 to work the best, and the alt tag can be title. Of course, we have to import image from next image. If we now save this, we have to ensure everything is good. It looks like it's going to complain because the image is not added as a secured hostname. So we have to go to our next config, which is here. And within this object, we have to say images, domains, and then inside of an array, say cdn.sanity.io. This is going to allow our next application to render images stored in Sanity. After changing config, you have to reload your application. So let's reload it, and hopefully we'll be able to see a resource image. There we go. This is already looking better. This div can have a class name equal to h-fit and w-full. Later on, this is going to help us position this image within the card container. That can have a class name equal to flex center, flex call, gap of 2.5, and important padding 0. Now, immediately below this div containing the image, we can render the card title. The card title will render the title, of course, but we need to style it to become visible. So let's give it a class name equal to text-white. Let's give it a paragraph of semi-bold, line clamp 1. This is going to ensure that it doesn't go outside of the width of the container, w-full, text-left. Now we can go outside of this link and we can focus on the card content. Card footer won't be needed in our case. There we go. So we have our card content. Card content is going to have a class name equal to flex between, margin top of 4, and padding of 0. Within it, we can render a div, and this div is going to render an image. This is just going to be a simple image pointing to /downloads.svg with a width of 20, a height of 20, and an alt equal to download. If we save this, you should be able to see a small image here. Of course, if I spell downloads correctly. There we go. And right next to it, we want to render the download number. Of course, to be able to see it, let's style this div by giving it a class name equal to flex center, body medium, gap of 1.5, and then text-white. We can try to render this download number as a template string. So let's close it right here and save it. And now it's going to be rendered as undefined. So let's see if we're properly passing the download number from the page. Oh, it looks like I misspelled it right here. So that's going to be download number. And now we don't have to do it as a string because it should just give us a 0. There we go. This is good. 0 downloads or views yet. Below this div, we can render another link. This link is going to have an href pointing to /resource/ and it's going to be the ID or the slug. So let's say ID. And of course, we have to make it dynamic by making it a template string. And I just noticed that our ID and the slug are identical, so we don't need to have both. We can just pass the ID and we're going to be good. And in the resource card, we can just disregard the slug and here as well. Finally, we don't need the card footer and card description, so we can just keep these elements right here coming from components UI. Great. Now, finally, what's going to go inside of this link? Well, we can say download now. And we can also render an image that's going to have a source equal to /arrow-blue.svg. The width can be set to 13 and the height to 0. And the alt tag can be arrow. You can see a little arrow right here. I believe if we set height to 10, it's still going to look good. Yeah, there we go. Finally, let's style this link by giving it a class name of flex center, text gradient, underscore purple dash blue, body semi-bold, and gap of 1.5. And here I misspelled gradient, so let's fix it. And now if I save, you can see this download now button. Great. And this is it for our one single card. You can see it's looking good, but of course it's going to look even better once we have some more on the screen. So let's try to add a different one. I'm going to go to our finished website right here, and I'm going to choose our ultimate MERN stack guide. So let me just save the image and we can copy the title as well. We can go to our localhost 3000/studio or just to your Sanity project. And then right here under datasets and production, we can expand this a bit, zoom it in as well. Now that we zoomed it in, we can also add one more resource just so we can verify everything is working. I'm going to copy the title, the Ultimate MERN Mastery Roadmap Guide. We're going to generate a slug. Let's copy the download link right from here. It's going to be another Google Drive link. So let's add it there. Views 0. And I uploaded a poster. The category in this case is going to be full stack. And let's click publish. As soon as you do that, let's see what's going to happen. If I reload the page right now, will we see something else besides header here? Well, not really. I don't see anything. What I needed to do to be able to see it is press Ctrl, Shift, and then R, which turned on the delete cache. So if you didn't know, there's a couple of different kinds of reloads. If you just reload, it's not going to reload the cache. But if you do Ctrl, Shift, and then R, it's going to always reload the cache as well and show you the newest version of the website. Our users, of course, won't know how to do that, right? So to fix it, on our page, Next.js allowed us to add something interesting. Export const revalidate. And this is a value in seconds. So if you say something like 900 seconds, that's like every 15 minutes. So whenever you add something to your Sanity Studio, this page is going to be server-side updated every 15 minutes. Great. Now that we have two resources right here, we can focus on searching and filtering. But before that, let's fix this error with our navbar. As you can see right now, it's going over our content. And let's also fix this header right here. Fixing the navbar is going to be pretty straightforward. We just head into the navbar component, and next to the border black 200, we add BG black 100. This is going to give it a background and make it appear on top. That's great. Now let's focus on this header right here. The header is going to be dynamic. It's going to show different things depending on where we are on the page. So if I search for Next 13, you can see Next 13 resources or front-end resources, but we're going to go a step further. And if you are already categorizing, but then if you add a search, it's also going to say searching results for Tailwind in front-end. So we have advanced searching and filtering at the same time. So to implement this header, let's turn it into a new component called header. We can, of course, create it within the components folder, header.tsx, run rafce, and then import it right here from components header. And it's going to be hidden right here, header. Considering this header will be dynamic, it will need to know where are we right now. Are we searching for something? And are we filtering something? Our header right now doesn't know that, but heck, we don't either. So let's figure out how to know what our users are currently searching and filtering for. We can do that by using Next.js's search params. So right here on the page, we can destructure something known as search params. And from those search params, we can get two things. We can get a category and a query. So let's try to console log it. Console log search params, save it. And of course, we have to define it within props. So we can say this is of a type props. And then interface props, where we have search params, is going to be of a type. We have a key of a type string, and then that's going to be of a type string or undefined. So now if we save this, and if you click Next 13 here, nothing changes, right? So we're not yet modifying the URL. And if you search for something, nothing happens. But here in the free resources, if you click something, it gets reflected right here at the top. Let me show you. Right now, the URL is empty, but if I click frontend, category is equal to frontend. And if I search something like Tailwind, as you can see, query gets added as well. So we have to figure out a way how to update the URL and search params when updating these values. To update those values, we of course have to go to these components. Let's start with categories first. That's going to be in the filters component. Once we click on the filter, we're currently just setting the state, but we're not really doing anything with the URL. So in the same function, we'll have to make some changes. Here, we'll form our query string. So let's define an empty variable. let new URL. It's equal to an empty string. And then we slowly want to start forming it. But to form the query string, we'll create a special utility function. So let's go to our file and folder structure. Within here, we're going to go to Sanity, and then here we have the utils. Although this is not going to be related to Sanity, so it even might make sense to put it somewhere outside. But for now, let's keep it here. And let's say export function form URL query. It's going to accept some params, a key, and a value that we want to update of a type URL query params. And we can define those URL query params right here at the top as an interface. So let's say interface URL query params. We're going to get params, which are going to be of a type string. We're going to get a key of a type string, and then a value of a type string, or sometimes null if it's not passed. Now we want to get a current URL. So we can say const current URL is equal to, and here we're going to use a special library called QS or query string. So at the top of this file, we can import QS from query string. And this is a library that's going to allow us to much more easily manage our query strings. So we can say qs.parse, and we can pass the params. And this is going to give us our current URL. As a matter of fact, let's console log this to see what we are really working with. So for now, I'm going to simply console log the current URL. And we can also console log the key and the value to see what's really happening. Now, back in our filters, here below the new URL, we can call our function. We can say new URL is equal to form URL query, which is coming from Sanity utils, and then we pass params. And params are going to be equal to search params, which are coming from next.js. So we need to say const search params is equal to use search params. And use search params has to be imported from next.js. So we can say import use search params, as well as use router is coming from next/navigation. Now we can pass search params as params. We can pass key as category, as filters are updating the category. And we can pass the value of null in this case. More on that later. And now you can see we don't even have to create a variable before. We can simply say let new URL is equal to form query. But form URL query, it's complaining right now that params is not assignable to a type string. So we have to say search params dot to string, which is going to convert it into a string. Now this is going to call our function, and then we should be able to see this console log to see which values are we working with. And if we click it, nothing seems to be happening. That's because I'm on the deployed side. So I want to go here. Why am I checking the console on the browser? Because filters is a client component. And now I click here and we get no search params and category and then null. So essentially that means that we currently don't have anything in the URL. Why did we have to know that? Because we don't want to delete what was previously there. So it's important to make that check whether we already have something in the search params or not. And then we're going to simply set category to the selected category. So we can say current URL and then access the key property and set it to be equal to the value property. Finally, we want to return a qs.stringify URL, and this is going to contain a URL equal to window.location.pathname, and we're going to add the query to it, which is going to be the current URL. Finally, there's this property called skip null, which we're going to set to true. This is our form URL query. And now if we go back to our filters, we're passing it here, but this only has to happen if we currently have an active link. So this is how I'm going to say, if active is triple equal to link that we're currently clicking. In that case, we simply want to call this form URL query, within this if statement right here. And we want to reset it by setting active to 0. So what we're doing here is we're just clearing the currently selected one. So if I go here, and if I click backend, you can notice I can go back to all results just by toggling it on and off. So this is the toggle right here. And here we have to say this is an empty string. But else, if we're not clicking on the currently selected one, but on another one, we can set active right here. And we can copy this form URL query and say new URL is equal to, and now we can take the link we're currently clicking on. So link dot to lowercase. There we go. And of course, here we also have to set new URL to be equal to this. And now that we have formed the new URL we want to go to, we can get access to our router by saying const router is equal to use router. We can simply say router dot push new URL, and scroll is set to false. So this is also going to modify the scroll. So if we select it, it always goes back to the top. As you can see, even if you're down, refresh, it scrolls to the top. Now, if we save this, let's see how it is working on our current site. I click backend, and the category actually changes. I click it back, it gets deleted. I click frontend, it gets added. And we can switch between. So this is working really, really well. As you can see, this was a bit more complicated to do because we're ensuring that this is a robust system. Nothing's gonna break once you do this or add this or now append search to it. That is the goal. So now that we're modifying the URL bar, let's go back to our page and let's access that category from search params. The only thing we have to do is just pass the updated search params to our getResources function, and it's going to fetch the appropriate one for us. So here, under category, we can say search params, !dot category, or an empty string. And if we save this, category is currently set to all, but if we click frontend, it changes the category to frontend. Although there should be one resource right now, nothing seems to be there. So let's add a console log of resources, and let's see if something does indeed get fetched or not. Currently, it seems that there's some kind of an error happening, unable to parse entire expression where type is resource and category is frontend, 0 to 10. And then we get undefined, of course. So we have to figure out if we have a mistake in our query. In my opinion, that's pointing to the build query function we have created within the utils folder. But thankfully, I told you to copy it and override it. So if you haven't already, you can override it with this one, and there's not going to be any typos there. And if you did that correctly, we should be able to see frontend. So once that function is good, we know that now we're really filtering based on the search query parameters. And if you go to backend, nothing's there. But full stack, we have our guide. So this indeed is working, and we can toggle it off and see both of them. So that means that searching by category is working. Now let's implement search by the query, and then we're going to modify the header as well, and we're going to have a complete homepage, completely server-side rendered. So we can go to our search form and start implementing it. Implementing search by query is going to be similar to implementing filtering, but the difference is the change is not going to be happening on click. Rather, it'll happen on a specific keystroke. In this case, we'll go even a step further and implement something known as debouncing. Debouncing an input simply means that we won't be making a request every time that we add a new keystroke. Rather, we'll wait for about 200 to 300 milliseconds, and then once we type enough characters in, we'll make a search. It is to optimize our app even further. Great. So to implement that, we'll have to add some kind of a use effect that's going to keep track of our changes. So let's create a new use effect snippet. We can of course import use effect from React, and we can declare a debounce function. Const delay debounce function is equal to set timeout where we provide a callback function, and then here we define what's going to happen. But as the second parameter, we have to define the debounce timer in milliseconds. So let's say every 300 milliseconds, we want to do something. For now, let's simply console log the actual value that we're working with. So that's going to be search. Now, since we're working with React, we want to keep our app optimized. We want to clear our timeout. So we can define a callback function, and we can call clear timeout and pass the function name. Now, when do we want to recall this use effect? Well, for now, when the search changes. Now, let's save this, and let's see what happens. I'm going to open up inspect element or the console right here in the browser. Right now, we're working on the client side, so the changes are going to show here. And I can type as much as I want, but nothing's going to happen. But once I stop typing for 300 milliseconds, then the changes are going to be applied. So you get the point, right? I can type out the entire React.js word, and we're going to only make one request instead of making one for every single character. That is the point. So now our debounce works, and we can actually not just console log this out, but make a request. And we're going to do something similar to what we did with our filter. We're going to call our form URL. So we can say if there is search, then we can do const new URL is equal to form URL query, which is the function we have already created. We can import it, and we can pass similar things we passed in the filter. We can pass params, which are going to be equal to search params.toString, and that's something we have to import at the top. So const search params is equal to use search params. We're going to also have the router is equal to use router, and we're going to have path name. So const path name is equal to use path name. And all of these are different Next.js hooks, and they're all coming from Next Navigation. So we can say Next Navigation, and from there we can import use path name, use router, and use search params. And we can put that at the top right here. And now we can pass params equal to search params dot toString. We can pass the key equal to query, as that's the key we want to update, and the value is going to be search. And as we did before, we want to do a router, not routes, dot push. We want to push to the new URL, and we want to say scroll is false. Now here, we don't have access to this new URL, so we can declare it outside and then just update the value here. So we can do that outside of the if, let new URL. There we go. And now we have access to this new URL, which at the start is going to be a string. If we now save this and type something like test, you can notice that the query at the top changes to test. Now, what if you delete this? Then nothing's going to happen and the query is going to remain. So we also have to add an else statement, and we have to clear this query. So here we can change the new URL, call the same form URL query, but here we're going to do something a bit different. We're again going to pass params equal to search params.toString, but here we're going to provide something new, keys to remove, and we want to remove the query. There we go. Now, of course, we have to go into the form URL and we have to modify it to accept this new property called keys to remove. So we can check if keys to remove, we can pass that. And we can add an if statement saying if keys to remove, then we want to do something. We want to loop over the keys. We want to say keys to remove dot for each. We're going to say key. We simply want to call delete current URL and then pass in the key. And just so we don't have two different key variables, we can rename this to key to remove and change it here as well. And in the else, we're going to do what we did before, which is update the current key. And we have to add keys to remove right here at the top. So keys to remove is going to be an optional array of strings. Great. Now you'll see that here TypeScript is complaining. And that's because if we're deleting something, in that case, our key and value are optional. So here we can just add question marks. Then it's going to complain here that undefined cannot be used as an index type. So we can say else if key and value exist, then update this. Great. So now here we're simply removing the query if there's nothing and then pushing the new URL. So let's test it out. If I type test, you can see test in the query. And if I delete it, you can see that it gets deleted. Now you might be wondering why, if I type test, frontend is still seen here and full stack, right? So it doesn't seem like it's actually filtering or searching anything, but trust me, it is. We just have to reflect those changes in the page TSX by getting the query from search params. So here we can say search params !query or an empty string. And now that's going to get pushed to the get resources function, which is going to try to make a request. No resources found under test. If we do backend, nope, nothing there. But what if I do React? Still nothing there, but front, we see our front-end developer roadmap. So this is working. So this is working well, and same thing for MERN. It is there. If I clear it, we see both. This is great. We're modifying the resources by changing the query and the category as well. Now let's modify the header. So let's first pass some props to the header so it knows what it is working with. First, we can pass a title, which is going to be resources. We can give it a query equal to search params query, and we can give it a category equal to search params category. Let's then move into the header and accept these as props. So we already know we'll be getting the type, we'll be getting the query, and the category, which are of a type props. And we can right here define interface props, not interface, it's interface. That's going to have a type equal to string. It's going to have a query of a type string and a category of a type string. And now based on these, we can show different types of headers. So let's first create a base header by saying return h1, and this h1 is going to say no results, and it's going to have a class name equal to heading 3 self start and text-white 800. If I save this and we actually move to no results, you can see that it says no results right here. But now we're going to do different ones. Let's add an if statement, and we're going to check if query and category exist. In that case, we want to return an h1 that's going to have same class names as here, so we can copy the class names. And it's going to say search results for, we can add quotes, then say query, and then say in type category. So now if we save this, if we search for something like test or React, and then click frontend, search results for React in category, but category is supposed to be this. So we should be able to see in which category, and we don't need type. So if I save this, search results for React in frontend, and we can actually capitalize this. So we can wrap the category in a span, and we can give it a class name equal to capitalize. This is going to make it look just a bit better. And we have to, of course, put in the same line, so it actually has a space between. There we go, looking good. Now, what if we only have a query or only have a category? Well, in that case, we can just say if query, we can return almost the same thing. So let's copy the entire thing, and we're going to simply say search results for query. And we can now copy or duplicate the same thing and say if category, we can just take the category part. So that's going to be the span that's going to render the category. And then we have no results at the end. So if we save this, with this, our search results are going to look good no matter whether we have nothing. And it's going to say no results, which is not good. So we have to go back here and we have to potentially hide the header in case there's nothing to be shown. So we can wrap our entire section right here in a dynamic code block that's going to look into search params question mark dot query or search params question mark dot category. And we can now put this entire section into it. So this is our section only for search, which means that we only want to show it if we're searching for something. So now if I save this, you cannot see anything because we're not showing anything by default. We just want people to search for it. So now if we select it, you can see next 13, or even better, front end. Once I removed front end, it actually remained there. So we need to look into the filters and see why did it not remove it. We can actually say keys to remove and then provide an array that's going to contain category. This is going to make our app even more functional. Let's see if that works. So now if I click front end and click it again, it removes it. That's good. And notice how quick it is. Like everything is working so fast. And if we just do search, it's also going to show a header and then search results for MERN. And again, everything is super, super quick. Now, I'm not sure why am I showing it on such a small screen. We can of course expand this and it's looking even better and it seems even faster. But of course, we don't want to have nothing on the screen here, right? We do want to show something. We want this to look good. So on the finished website, we're going to always have something there. We're going to have some kind of collections like popular, latest, and so much more. So let's go ahead and implement those collections. But before that, let's fix our footer a bit because I can notice it's not looking good. So if we head to our footer, let's see, we're giving it a flex between, we have body, full width, gap Y 10, we are even adding borders. We're giving it a padding X of 20, but a padding Y of only 1, and it should have been 12. So that's going to give it just some spacing right here. And it still seems empty, but as I said, once we add those collections right here, we'll have some more content to show. So let's collapse this one more time. And now, instead of just rendering those base resources on the homepage only when we search, we can also render something by default. So let's create a function that's going to allow us to fetch our resources playlists. We can do that by going to our action, and right above get resources, we can export const, and it's going to be a really similar function. So we can essentially copy the entire get resources and paste it above, change the name to get resources playlist. In this case, we don't have to build any kind of query because we're dealing with just a static call. So we can simply remove all of this build query right here. And we can say grok everything where underscore type is triple equal to, that's going to be resource playlist. And you have to wrap it in double quoted strings. Then we open up a block and say, what do we want to get back? We want to get back the ID, the title, and then we want to get resources from 0 to 6. And with an arrow, we can point to what do we want to get from each one of these resources. It's going to be a title. It's going to be the underscore ID, the download link, the image, views, and we need to get the category as well. And this is our new query. And we of course have to close this query opening right here. Finally, we return the resources. So now we can call this right here from our page at the top where we called our resources. We can do that by saying const resources playlist is equal to await get resources playlist. And we just call it as a function. And it's being imported from same Sanity actions. Now, if we save this, nothing's gonna be there. And that's because we haven't yet created any kind of a resource playlist. So if we go to localhost 3000/studio resource playlist, we can create one right here by creating a new resource playlist document, and we can replicate what we have on the deployed site. The most important playlist is going to be most popular. So let's create it. And now you can add specific items to that query. So in this case, for example, it can be front-end developer roadmap, and we can add another. It can be the ultimate MERN guide. And as you add more resources, you can just refer to them right here and click publish. Now, if we go back to the website, let's simply console.log the resources playlist. Save it, open up the terminal, and reload the page. here we get a bad request. It's saying that it expected the following expression. So it's possible we have an error in our query right here. And yep, I can see it. We are not closing the square bracket right here. So if we save it, go back and open up the terminal. Let's reload the page as well. And we get two different queries. We have most popular, but it looks like I misspelled resources. So if we go back, that's going to be resources. There we go. Save it. And one more time. What do we get back? We get back two different resources, which we can now map over right here below. So right here, we can map over our resources playlist. And here, we're going to get each individual item, which is a playlist of its own. We can have multiple playlists. As you can see on our deployed website, we have most popular, but then we also have latest. And if you want to, in your Sanity Studio, you can create more playlists. Of course, after we fix this error. But for now, one is fine for us. So let's properly close everything right here. And let's return a section for each one of these. This section is going to have a key equal to item._id and a class name equal to flex-center, margin top of 6, w-full for full width, flex-call, and on small devices, margin top of 20. Now, if we save this, it looks like resources playlist is not a function. That's because I have to call a .map on it. There we go. And we still cannot see anything. But now within this section, we can render an h1. And this h1 is going to render the item.title. So this is the title of the playlist. Let's give it a class name equal to heading 3, self start, text-white-800. If we save it, we should be able to see most popular. And right below it, we can create a div that's going to serve as a container for the mapping of our resources. So we can give it a margin top of 12 to divide it a bit, flex, w-full for full width, flex wrap, so they wrap on screens of smaller sizes. We can give it a justify center, gap of 16 in between the elements, and on small devices, justify start. Within it, we simply want to map over our resources, and we can do that in the same way that we've done it right here. So we can say resources.map and then simply show the resource card. So let's open a dynamic block of code, paste this here, and press save. Immediately, you can see our front-end developer roadmap as well as our MERN guide. So if we expand this, we can see that now this is looking pretty good. We have a comprehensive resources page. And with that, the sorting and filtering is also working perfectly. And we can also search for something like React, and that's within frontend, right? So we can do all, and we can clear it, and we can say frontend, not React. There we go, we have frontend. And now we also see the most popular and all the other stuff right below. But that's not good, because we're also at the same time filtering the playlist. We want the playlist to remain the same. So now if we clear this, you can see the playlist has 2 elements, but if we search, it also has 0. So instead of mapping over resources, we want to map over item.resources. That means that these are the resources of a specific playlist. So now, even though there's nothing for the search, there still will be something for the playlist. Now, this was the most important part that I wanted you to create in this website. And instead of simply pointing to the details page of this one, what we can do for now is simply go to this resource card, and on the link, instead of redirecting to the details page, we can redirect to the download link. So we have to pass it as a prop right here to the resource card. Download link is going to be equal to resource.download link. And we can also pass it in the resources above once we search for them. Now, moving into the resource card, we can accept the download link, which is going to be of a type string. So we can say download link of a type string. And now, right here, on click, we can go to download link. And same thing can happen if we click the download button. we go to the download link. Now, if we do that, if you click on this image, it's going to point you straight to the Google Drive. And we do want to add a target of blank. So here we can say target is equal to underscore blank. And we can do the same thing right here below, target underscore blank. This is going to ensure that the link opens up in a new tab, so we can still open some other links as well. And of course, everything we've done so far is completely mobile responsive. That's how we do things right here. And I don't even have to mention how optimized it is. And before we call it a day, I also want to implement the loading page. So once you're first loading this, you want to see these skeleton elements appear for a second, indicating that something is loading. So to do that in next.js, you can add a new special page where your original page is, called loading.tsx. And in that loading, we're going to implement something known as a skeleton. A skeleton is a shadcn component that simply looks like this. It's like nothing is there, just some flashing rectangles indicating that something will be there really soon once it loads. So let's copy this command. Let's go to a terminal and let's install shadcn UI latest add skeleton. Now we can press Y and we can simply import skeleton right here at the top. And we can import its usage. So that's going to be within the main container. We want to create a section within it. And then there, we want to add that skeleton. Now, it's going to be hard to replicate this because my internet speed is quite fast. If you have a slower speed, you'll be able to see it. But let's first implement it, and then I'm going to show you how you can slow down your internet to be able to see the loading that's happening. So in this case, let's give it a class name equal to flex center. Let's give it paddings, margin X of auto, so it appears in the middle, W of full, max-W-screen of 2XL. So this is max width of 1440p, and flex call. This initial section is going to have a class name equal to nav padding and W full. The skeleton is going to be of the same height that this header is. So let's create a new H dash. I believe it was 274 pixels. And it's going to be W full for full width and rounded LG. Below this section, we're going to have another section. And this one is going to have a class name equal to margin top of 6, flex, W dash full, flex dash call, and on small devices, margin top of 20. Inside of there, we want to render yet another skeleton. This one is going to be for our heading, something like most popular. It can be a self-closing component that's going to have a class name of H-10. We don't need more for a simple heading, and W of 56. Finally, we want to show some rectangles for each one of our resources. So right here, we can create a new div that's going to have a class name equal to margin top of 12, flex, W dash full, flex dash wrap, justify dash center, gap of 16, and on small devices, justify start. And within it, we can just create a skeleton that's going to have a class name equal to the same height of this element right here, which is H of 440 pixels, W full, and on small devices, width of 356 pixels. And we can duplicate that 2 or 3 times to show that there are more of these happening. So now if we save this and reload the page, you might be able to see it quickly, but if you go to inspect, let's expand the browser fully, go to network, and then here where it says no throttling, you can turn on fast or slow 3G. Let's do fast. This is going to emulate a slower internet speed. And now I can reload and try to watch for these rectangles. Okay, it was super quick here. We didn't even see it. Let's try one more time with a slow 3G. And I'm going to do a hard reload by pressing Ctrl, Shift, and then R. to really simulate a complete reload. And still, we immediately got the resources. It is possible that the background of our skeletons is the same color as of our background. So let's go into the code and let's just change the background color to see if that's maybe it. On each one of these skeletons, and we have 4 in total, within their class name, I'm going to add bg-red-500 for now, just to see if that's going to make them show. So now if I do Control-Shift-R to do a hard reload, you can see that it's slowly loading, and we saw it for just a split second. I saw bits and pieces of red. So if I do fast 3G, and once again, if I disable cache and reload, yeah, it flashed for a second. But on slower devices, and once we deploy it, this plays a major role in increasing our load speed. And now we are ready to deploy to the internet so that we can see how fast it works and how well it functions. You might have noticed that in our working version, I didn't implement this resource details page. I figured out that it doesn't really provide a lot of information, as we just go here and then click download. We can do a similar thing by simply downloading from here. But in case you want to build this on your own to build another page and figure out how to do it server-side rendered, you can do that, because the entire code of this entire segment is going to be linked in the description down below. It's going to be a complete GitHub repo. So with that said, we've now built it, and now let's deploy it to the internet so that we can share it with everyone online. We can start by closing all of these currently open tabs, as we only need one. And that one is Vercel, that allows us to develop, preview, and ship our Next.js applications. So go to vercel.com and click sign up or login, and do that using GitHub. Once you're in, you'll see something that looks like this. And this is where you'll see all of your currently deployed Next.js projects. Right here, you can see many, but these are not my projects. These are the projects of JSM Masterclass Experience teams. We have many teams in each cohort, and we can see how they're pushing their code and providing them with pull request reviews. In our case, let's go to add new, and let's add a new project. But before we do that, we need to push our current repo to GitHub. So go to github.com/new, create your repo name such as JSM resources next13, make it either public or private, and click create repository. Then we can put this side by side, open up the terminal, stop it from running by pressing Ctrl+C and then Y, clear it, and we can start by copying the commands from here. Git init, then do git add dot, git commit -m first commit, git branch m main, git remote add origin, and finally git push u origin master. Once you do that and reload this page, you'll be able to see all of your code. And if you go back to Vercel and reload, or you didn't even have to reload, they did it automatically, you can see a new just now created project, so click import. Here, we'll need to add our environment variables. And a really cool feature that Next.js provides is you can just copy them right here within our .env, copy all of the variables, and simply paste them as the first key. They're going to automatically get added, and you can click deploy. It is possible that our deployment will fail due to some small TypeScript warnings, but if that happens, we're gonna fix it and try again. And it looks like we have a small building error. If we open it up, you can see that I was right. We have a small TypeScript error. It is within our home component right here. So let's go to our home route. And right here, it says title resources. And we just need to look into the header. It looks like we're not really accepting or using the title. It was just typed right here. So what we can do is simply delete it from here. And also delete the type of the header here, as we're not using it. If we now save this, everything is looking good, and we can just run git add dot git commit -m fix TypeScript. error, and then do git push. Next.js is going to automatically push this to Vercel. That is then going to try to redeploy it automatically. So let's go to our projects. And there we have it. We can see that it's currently trying to build new fixed TypeScript error commit. It says there's an error, so let's click it one more time. Go under build, and it looks like it didn't show all the errors at the first time, so we still have another one in the resource playlist schema. So just to be sure, I'm going to close all of the files and go to our resource playlist schema, which is going to be under Sanity, schemas, resource playlist. And here we have to define rule with a type of any for now. And I believe that's it for now. So we can just do git add dot git commit -m fix TypeScript error and git push. Once again, I know this is a pain in the ass, but it really shows you how simple it is to just keep pushing and to use this continuous deployment using Next.js and Vercel integration. So let's reload, go back to our project, and wait for our last commit to build. And we are live. So if we go back to project, expand it, and click visit, a new link is going to open up, and we can see our application. It's working as well as it did on localhost, and the search and loading and everything else is instantaneous. Now, before we call it a day, there's still two things I would like to do to this application. First one is to fix this ugly red loading and make a nice gray one, and then teach you how to further improve the SEO of your application. So let's just go back to the code one final time. Let's go to our loading. And instead of BG red 500, we can do something else like BG black 200 over 40. So this is going to just make it a bit different from the background. It's going to change the opacity. That's good now. But on top of that, we are yet to discuss SEO. We've done a bit of SEO right here in the main layout. We can see export const metadata, and this changed the title of our application, as you can see right here. But let me show you how we can improve it further. You can add an other property right here that's going to accept things like theme color. Yep, you know how on mobile devices you have a different color of your tab or of your bar above the website. If the website is in dark mode, you can also make this dark. So let's use 0D1117. This is going to make it look so much cleaner on mobile devices. Similarly, we can also change the color scheme to be dark only. Now, once you share this link with somebody, that link can just be that, a link. But you can also show some kind of an image once you share it. These are called meta properties, and they have been here for a long time. Essentially, you're providing metadata to the link that you share or to your website. Here we have a nice photo by Flavio, which you can see what it does. So if I open it right here, if you provide some more information to your link, it's going to generate a nice image with a description, title, link, and more. So to do it, we have to add a couple of properties. And with Next.js, it is as simple as adding them right here. So you can add something known as a Twitter image. And this is going to be image that's going to be rendered once you share this link on Twitter. In this case, I have this great photo, say hi to JSM Pro, and we can render that thumbnail. Feel free to use anything else here, or pause this video and type it out. Try not to make a typo. I'm also going to include it in the description in case you want to copy it. Then we can do a Twitter card and say summary _ large _ image, and you can add many other Twitter properties. You can then add something known as an OG URL. So this is going to be the main URL, jsmastery.pro. You can add something known as an OG image. So when you share this image on WhatsApp or some other chats, Discord, this is going to display that image. So we can do a similar thing by copying this one right here. You can do an OG type as well of website. And for now, this is going to be good. Of course, we also want to update our favicon. So if you go to our public favicon ICO, you can just drag and drop it from public into our app and click replace. This is going to allow us to have a better favicon. Now with all of these changes, let's one more time do a git add dot git commit -m, let's say fix skeleton color and improve metadata and change favicon. And let's do git push. The changes are going to be live in about 30 to 40 seconds, and then we'll be able to see them on our deployed link. So pause the video, wait until it is done for you, and there we go, you saw the loading there while I was speaking. Let's wait until the deployment gets there, and we'll see it in action together. And we are live, so go to your URL, press Ctrl-Shift-R if you want to do a hard reload, and it is loaded. Let's try to share this link somewhere so I can show you how it adds additional metadata. There's actually a website for testing that called opengraph.xyz. It's the easiest way to preview and generate Open Graph meta tags. So you simply paste the URL and press check website. And as you can see, it's going to show like this on Facebook, like this on Twitter, LinkedIn, Discord, and more, just by adding these tags. It means that it has properly read them. But much more important, is our website optimized and performant as every Next.js website should be? Well, go to gtmetrics.com and paste your URL right here and click test your website. This is going to use Google Lighthouse and many other services to check how performant your website is. It's slowly loading and we'll soon get our results. And our results are right here. We have a performance score of 100% and a largest contentful paint of just half a second. Of course, there can always be some further modifications we can make, but in this case, this is perfect. As you can see, everything is in green, and you can essentially see the first thing on the website, as well as everything on the website, faster than you can blink, and you can immediately interact with it. And this is the kind of speed you'll now be able to replicate on all of your websites. I mean, check this website out. It is a huge landing page for our JSM Masterclass experience. And when I say it's huge, I truly do mean it. Just look at this. How much time do you think it takes to load this? Well, it is 484 milliseconds. The fully loaded time here is a bit misleading. It's because of the Google tag tracking, but as you can see, the most important metrics, like the first contentful paint, is crazy good. And that wraps it up for today. If you liked what you saw today, you'll absolutely adore the Ultimate Next.js 13 course. It's my best course yet, and it will not only be an amazing project-based course, but you will also learn how Next.js and the web work under the hood. The other huge improvement I added to the courses are interactive lessons. To make sure you can reproduce what you're seeing on your own, I added special interactive lessons with instructions, hints, and then solutions. The course is launching on September 22nd, and if you don't want to miss the launch sale and exclusive launch bonuses, I highly recommend you to join the waitlist. To join, head over to jsmastery.pro/next13. And if you're watching this once the course launched, the good news is you don't have to wait. That's all from me today. I'll see you inside the course or in the next one. Have a wonderful day.